What's your current job here in Singapore?
I work in reinsurance.
Okay. And do you mind asking how much you make around a month here?
Like five figures, I guess.
Okay, so five figures in 1 month.
Yes.
Uh,
Yeah.
about $10,000 a month.
A bit higher than that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what is your current job here in Singapore?
Domestic helper. Yeah.
And can I ask you how much you make a month as a domestic helper in Singapore?
950 a month. Yeah, plus another food allowance. So 200 per month. Yeah.
Currently, I'm unemployed because of some layoff, but I was a software engineer in an AI company.
So, in your previous job as a software engineer, could you tell us roughly how much you made a month?
Um yeah, I was making 8.6k on 13 months.
Okay, so 8.6 K Singapore dollars in 1 month, yes?
Yeah.
I'm a software engineer. I work in the financial services industry. Around 250, 300.
So I alternate between here and California, and I teach. I teach at NTU.
And would you mind sharing how much you make currently per month? Roughly, if we were to say, would it be more than $5,000?
Yes, of course. Yeah.
More than $10,000?
Yes.
Okay. And do you think you would earn more or less in the same position from your home country compared to Singapore?
I'm more in the home country.
More in the home country.
I work in oil and gas, oil and gas trading.
So, do you think you would earn more or less in the same position in the United States?
Well, that's a difficult question because I might earn more, but then after taxes and everything, it's difficult to say because expenses are more here in Singapore and stuff. So I don't know. It'd probably break even.
And what is your job in Singapore?
Domestic helper.
And can I ask you roughly how much you make per month?
Come again?
Yeah, how much your salary is per month?
800. Yes.
Would you say that is higher or lower than the average?
It's normal. Yeah, it's normal.
I see. And, Singapore is considered one of the most expensive cities in the world.
Yes.
I'm curious, what are some things that are expensive here in Singapore?
Everything is very expensive.
How much does a meal cost in Singapore?
Milk,
Yeah, just eating meal.
just $8.
$8.
Yes.
But in Philippines, how much?
And Philippines just only 30 pesos. 30 pesos is below $1.
So big difference.
Yes.
And what is your current job here in
I'm
Singapore?
a managing director of a British-American firm, and we manufacture office accessories in China, and we sell throughout Asia.
And can I ask how much you make around a month? Roughly, if I was to give a range.
No.
Okay. Do you think you would earn more or less here in Singapore versus in Germany?
Not at all, but living in Singapore was a choice. I based my choice on my experience when I lived here from 1993 till the year 2000 in a similar job but different company, and I find the quality of life so much higher here than in any other country where I've lived. And when I talk about other countries, I'm talking about Asia and the Middle East. I'm 57, so I have lived in certain places already in my life. So Singapore is doing a great job when it comes to quality of life, even though the cost of living is one of the highest here in the world.
Do you think you would earn more or less in the same position back in Australia?
I think probably similar. Yeah.
If it's similar, why did you choose kind of Singapore to work here?
Yeah, I would say it's like, firstly, the sunshine makes me pretty happy, international lifestyle, and I guess ability to like travel and see other cultures.
Where are some places that you like to travel here in this region?
Yeah, I love all Southeast Asia, like, obviously Bali, and I guess like Bali, Thailand, even the Philippines sometimes. I do some diving as well, so yeah.
Cool. And do you feel like your salary is enough to cover your living expenses here in Singapore as a foreigner?
It is, but the rent is very expensive.
How much do you have to pay for rent here in Singapore?
I would say I spend like over 30% of my salary on rent.
Do you feel like your salary is enough for your life right now in Singapore?
Actually, it's not enough. Yeah, because I got 2 kids and I need to support my mother also. And some I give to my sister because she's got cancer now. So I need to. So now it's not enough. 900 is not enough. Yeah.
And can you tell me about how much money you send back home to the Philippines?
Actually, I can send about 800. 100 is for my allowance. Yes.
And with that $100, like what can you spend on here in Singapore?
I spend in Singapore. Sometimes I feel like eating this, so I need to buy. Yeah.
Do you feel like your salary is enough to cover your living expenses right now? You kind of mentioned that Singapore can be expensive.
Yeah, well, I mean, with with the kid and everything, I mean, my wife works and everything as well. So I think with that included, with the schooling coming up and rentals and everything. I mean, not to say we don't live comfortably, but it's nice to have the 2 salaries, and that's really kind of what makes life livable here, I think. Yeah.
Do you feel like your current salary is enough to cover and sustain a life here in Singapore?
It's workable, but I mean, over the years, things have gotten fairly expensive. Right?
What is specifically?
Well, everything really, right? I mean, when you talk about inflation, it's hit all kinds of goods and services, and everybody is correspondingly raising the prices on everything as well. There was that whole period of time where rent went through the roof, right? I mean, I think it's coming down again, but as always, when the rent gets one of those major adjustments, it never goes back down to the original level, right? So you're dealing with a number of challenges in that respect.
Do you feel like with your current salary, it's enough?
Yeah, actually it's enough, but sometimes since I have 3 college, I have 3 kids and they are all in college, so maybe I have to earn more. So sometimes I have to borrow money in Philippines because here in Singapore we're not allowed to borrow money here because it's not allowed in the government. So what we do is in Philippines we have to borrow money and then we can just pay slowly for our salary here.
Well, after COVID, the hike of the price of real estate hit a bit, actually much more. But I guess it was a bit everywhere in the world like this. So I don't really know the market in France now, but I guess it's the same. So.
Over the last year, the rents became a little high, but it wasn't a big problem. It was certainly way higher than when I came to Singapore. Then it increased by 40-50%. So that was a little hard to take, but it's fine. Now they're cooling down, so yeah, it's better.
And so when you first arrived to Singapore, how much was your rent?
When I was first arrived, it was 5K a month, and then during the increase, the same apartment in my condo started going for 7, so it increased by 40%. So, but now, my renewal is coming up, so I'm hoping I would renew for the same price, not the.
Because Singapore is considered one of the most expensive places to live in Asia, but also in the world, could you give us some insights of what aspects makes it so expensive to live here in Singapore?
Yes, the alcohol is taxed heavily first. Eating in restaurant can get quite pricey. Taxi bills can pile up.
And what about your rent here in Singapore? Is that also quite expensive?
It's quite high. It's on the order of 6,000 a month.
And would you say that is more or less compared to the United States?
Comparable to where I live in California.
I mean, mainly it's the rent. And, well, I mean, and to be honest with you, if you want to, you know, having a social life can be a little bit expensive. You know, if you're planning to go out on weekends and stuff like that, you know, the alcohol isn't cheap here. I mean, I would say nothing out of the ordinary, just kind of day-to-day life. But that said, I mean, all that said, I mean, we're talking about expenses. I mean, you can have a cheap life in Singapore. The food here's delicious, and you don't have to go to the expensive options by any means. I mean, one of the benefits of living here that's relatively cheap is actually you can fly out, you know, go to Vietnam, Thailand, Cambodia, Bali, all you want for relatively, you know, a few $100s a flight ticket.
Do you think that your salary is enough to cover your expenses in Singapore?
Yes, it's very enough.
Have you ever had some financial issues while living in Singapore?
No, I never.
So good for 5 years.
Yes.
And I'm curious, how much money do you think you have to make in salary to have no worries? How much salary you need to have no worries living in Singapore?
Around $1,000.
$1,000 a month?
Yes.
How much do you think you'd have to earn? Is there like a magic number that would be kind of a worry-free salary here in Singapore?
Okay, like I have a whole philosophy there, which is probably too boring for your channel, but I think it's got to be about passive income, not about salary. So I would say, like, you know, if I had a few $1 million, then I'd be, you know, pretty stress-free. I think as long as you're working for your salary, you're always going to have some kind of stress. Yeah.
And do you think it is possible in Singapore to have this kind of like passive income of like, you know, getting this like $1 million here in Singapore?
Yeah, I think it is, but it's like just a lot of work, and obviously for Singaporeans, it's a lot of work as well, right? Trying to save money and reduce how much you spend. So it might take like, I don't know how many decades, but long-term goals.
So what kind of salary would be completely worry-free here in Singapore?
I think, yeah, 900 or 900 more than that, yeah.
So right now, would you say it's pretty comfortable?
For me, for now, it's pretty comfortable, yeah.
Do you send money back home then?
Yeah.
How much do you send?
I send like almost like 30,000 peso.
Okay.
Yeah.
Roughly how much is that?
900. Yeah.
So most of your money you actually...
Most of my money, yeah.
Okay.
Most of my money.
Okay.
Most of my salary. So I have to keep saving. So what I've saved now is my food allowance. Yeah.
I see. How much do you think you would need to make in Singapore in order to have like a worry-free like lifestyle?
That's a good question. It depends on if you have government subsidies. So if you are a foreigner living here, a comfortable lifestyle would be on the minimum of 10 grand a month.
I don't know, like $1 million.
So $1 million, yeah? So do you think that is actually possible to make $1 million as a salary here in Singapore as a foreigner?
Yeah, I think it's very possible if you work hard. Like there are enough opportunities to make that kind of money.
I have no idea. I haven't given that any thought.
Any number comes to mind?
I don't know. I mean, obviously, it's one of those situations where the sky's the limit, right? I mean, you can talk to the richest people in the world, and they'll probably still say, "Oh, I wish I were making more." So,
what are some of the biggest advantages of working here in Singapore as a foreigner?
I don't know if I would fully consider myself a foreigner at this point, anyway, being a PR. But I mean, for me, it's a very advanced country. The schooling here is very good. My kids go to local school. It's very connected internationally. I mean, if you look at it from the perspective of someone that's lived in various countries, here in Singapore, because everything is imported, you can get goods from pretty much all over the place, and it's functionally equivalent to the point where there's stuff that we would have been used to getting in Europe that we're able to get here that we wouldn't have been able to get in the US very easily. And here it's just like a normal item in, cold storage or something like that. So from that perspective, it's quite nice. It's very international.
I think the weather is really great for foreigners. I think the travel options are amazing. I think, the tax is good as well. So I think that's also a positive. But I think it shouldn't be the main reason to come to Singapore. So actually, I've lived in Hong Kong and Japan previously. I would say Singapore is like one of the easiest places to live outside of Australia that I've ever found. Yeah.
What makes it a lot easier compared to like Hong Kong and some of the other places you've lived in?
Well, I think it's just like really, stable, sunny, and it's a bit selfish, but obviously, like everyone speaks English. Even this interview here, right, is completely English, and that just makes it easy.
The quality of life is one of the key advantages that Singapore has to offer. The people of Singapore offer a very amicable environment, respectful environment. Give you an example. You step in the bus in the early morning and the bus driver looks at you and says good morning. He acknowledges you as a customer and that you are there and he's smiling. It doesn't cost any money, but it makes me feel so good. And I share this even now with you, right? So these are the little things that are very important. I think those are the key issues. And of course, it's very safe here. You can walk around with expensive stuff on you. My wife can walk around here in the evening, doesn't need to fear any issues. So it's super safe here as well. Fantastic.
And then on the flip side, any big challenges of living here in Singapore? Maybe, for example, like the working culture or anything like that?
Well, I mean, the challenge for me personally is that it's far from family. It's far from everywhere. So you kind of have, like I mentioned before, you have to travel a lot. I mean, to be completely honest, with work culture, the only thing that I really had to get used to was, I feel like in the US people are more like maybe blunt or how do I say, like straight to the point. Like here sometimes you have to frame questions in a way where like the person that you're confronting saves face or doesn't get embarrassed. I think that's something that something culturally, like how you challenge someone, if there's a disagreement or if you see things differently, might require a different strategy than how you would in the US, at least culturally. Yeah.
And so the last question that we'd like to ask you for our global audience is, for anyone who's considering working in Singapore, do you have any advice or any kind of tips that you would share with them?
First piece of advice, try to come at higher level than the lowest level. Because climbing the ladder here could be much lengthier experience than it could be elsewhere, at least in some countries. So come at a slightly higher level. That would be my one piece of advice. Other, be open to changing the balance of work priorities. Because work priorities tend to, depending on the sector, be very different here than, let's say, for example, in the US.
Yeah, I would say two things. Let's say one, you've got to have a pretty valuable skill set, because Singapore, it's quite hard to get the employee pass now, and I think that's right because it's such a popular city. But you're going to need some pretty special skills. So invest in yourself and study and work hard. And maybe secondly, persevere. Maybe your first job application is not successful, but if you really want to go to Singapore, then keep trying. And in the meantime, you can visit Singapore anyway. So
Don't live in an expat bubble, right? I find there's been a number of instances, not everybody, of course, but there's been a number of instances where people live in what I call the expat bubble. I would strongly recommend against it. I would make sure you have lots of local friends, really get tapped into your local communities, and you know, it will make your life in the long run, I think, a lot more interesting.
Well, I mean, do it. It's a safe, clean place, and it's, you know, there's a lot of opportunity both here in the region to like travel around. I think one of the advice is just come and like be open-minded, really, and open to like, you know, experience, you know, different culture. And I actually kind of said this, you know, I would say, I feel like Singapore is a bit like Asia for beginners, or Asia 101, especially for foreigners, because everyone speaks English. The work culture is not that different. You know, people are friendly. And so it's easy to come here and to move here and to start working here, as opposed to, you know, if you, as opposed to if you went to a country where, like, you know, English, a lot less people spoke and it was more difficult to get around and everything. So when I first moved here, like finding a group of like friends and a social activity and things like that took a while, and that was probably the most hard part for me. But you know, stick it out, be open-minded, and yeah, and I think if you can make it past like a year and a half, then you'll know. But like, don't bail early, I guess would be the advice, if that's something that you want to do. Yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah.